Speaking success is business success. Think about it. We almost never see a business leader who isn't also an accomplished speaker. Whether you're talking about Steve Jobs or Sir Richard Branson, Sheryl Sandberg, Jeff Bezos, the great ones, the ones that inspire us, are almost always great speakers. In 2004, at the Democratic National Convention, a young man stood up and spoke for 17 minutes, 2,200 words. The day before, no one had ever heard of Barack Obama. The day after, no one could stop talking about him. But this, I know he's a politician, but this isn't about politics. This is about you and your ability to change your world with your ability to speak. Carnegie Institute of Technology did a study, and it came back and they said 85% of your success in the next 5 years, depending on your ability to speak and communicate your ideas. 85%. That's more than your degree. That's more than your connections. That's more than the number of years you have in the business. 85% of your success in the next 5 years is your ability to speak and communicate your ideas. That's why I'm really excited about this class. The reason I'm excited about this class is because I know you can take your skills from where they are today to where you want them to be. Now, in the marketplace, we could all of us out there could go and get a degree, get an MBA, get a PhD, get some other certification in our field, and we would improve our prospects. But I'm not sure there's anything that we could do that would improve our prospects in the next 5 years more than the 85% we get from learning speaking skills. I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen people who come in and they're rough, really rough, and then by the time they leave, they're good. They're really good. And so I'm really excited about this. My why, the reason I do this is because I do see that change so quickly. So I'm going to teach you first and foremost the why formula. The why formula is exactly what it sounds like. It's a formula. The idea is you take this plan, you put your information into it, and it works. It will take an ordinary speech and make it into something extraordinary. It works every time, whether you're talking to an internal group, an external group, whether you're speaking at your school or your church, or you're speaking to the Rotary Club. The why formula just simply works. And I've got people over and over and over again who get what they want, who get the grants, who get the money, who get the accolades, who get the business, because they've understood the why formula. Let me walk you through this. This is the why formula. This is what it looks like on the left. You'll see your why. You're going to begin your presentation with your why. In the center, you're going to go through your how and your what. Your how and your what is probably something you know, probably something you're good at. And then at the end, you're going to do a connect to purpose story. The connect to purpose story is, if you look at our why, what is our why? The connect to purpose story is a story about somebody who has been affected by what you do, by why you do it, and now this is the result. So that's the connect to purpose story. Let's start with the why. Your why is it that you do this? And I'm talking about something deep and meaningful, not to make money, not because you like to play golf, not because your why is, why do you get up in the morning? Why do you go through all the trouble? What is the difference that you're able to make in somebody else's life because of what you do? Right? And so you have to spend some time talking about your why. And the why is something that's very immediate, very, very important to people. And I'll give you an example. I interviewed somebody a while back. Her name is Melissa, and she's a life flight nurse. You know, they ride out in the helicopter, they fly out in the middle of the night, they go to some lonely stretch of highway, pick somebody up, put them in the helicopter, fly them back, and with any luck, they save their lives. That would seem like that would be the kind of a job that would just have a why really big printed right on the front of it, right? But when I interviewed her, she talked about the how and the what. How many times they go out, what they take with them, what the procedures are, how, what. It was a good conversation, but it wasn't an important conversation. It wasn't something that touched me or the listener emotionally. And so finally I said, well, Melissa, just tell me, do you ever save people's lives? And she said, well, of course, all the time. I said, well, let's talk about those. And all of a sudden, the conversation changed, and it shifted into something that was really an emotional conversation. She started talking about what she called her saves. That is, people who would have died, likely would not have made it if she and her team weren't there. And when she started telling me those stories of her why, all of a sudden it became something emotionally important. So she said, for instance, a terrible wreck. Mom and dad were seriously hurt. Little girl, they put her in the helicopter. They flew her back and tried to get her back in time that she could be saved. And the little girl was so terrified. And Melissa held her hand, and all the way back they decided to sing, and they sang songs from Frozen. And that calmed her down enough to ride the helicopter that distance. And she told me another story. She said one time she and the rest of the team, the 2 pilots and herself, were in the cafeteria at the hospital. And they're in their flight suits, and so they stand out. It's very apparent what they do for a living. And she said somebody came up behind her and hugged her, and just like a bear hug, just crushing hug. And it was just so big. And Melissa tried to turn around, and when she turned around, she violently got around. It was a big woman, an elderly woman, and she was just sobbing. This woman told Melissa, she said, last week you came out, my daddy had a heart attack. And you came out and you landed in the lawn, and you took daddy and you put him in the helicopter, and you took off and you flew back to the hospital. And she said everybody, the neighbors and everybody that were there, they all said the same thing. He's not going to make it. I think your daddy's died. And she said, he didn't though. You saved him. And now he's upstairs in the hospital, and they feel good about him. They feel like he's going to be all right. In fact, they're talking about the day that he can be discharged and come back to live with us. And she said, I just want to tell you how thankful I am, because I wasn't ready to say goodbye to my daddy. That's the kind of impact. That's the story. That's the why. You have a different conversation when you talk about your why than when you do about your how and your what. Now, how and what's important. How do you raise money? How do you get money? Who comes? Who goes? That's important. But here's the caveat to that. People aren't nearly as interested in your how and your what as you think they are. Whenever you run a business, I run a business, I understand this. There's a lot of interior stuff that goes on, but people aren't listening to that. They're not interested in that. I could tell you that I'm an LLC. I could have started my conversation here telling you that I was an LLC, used to be a sole proprietor. I could tell you about my funding mechanism. I could tell you about a list of clients that I've worked with, and you would have all gone to sleep. But if I tell you my why up front, all of a sudden you're listening. And it's interesting because the why is about you. You know, my why, speaking success, is business success. You can learn it. 85% of your success in the next 5 years has to do with your ability to speak and communicate your ideas. That's my why. I just said it right up front. That's exactly where I started. When you have a why, it's usually about the audience. Okay? So then your how and your what, you're going to want to keep that as succinct as possible. And certainly if you're doing an elevator speech, if you're just at a dinner party, you say your why, maybe a little bit of your how and your what, and then a connect to purpose story. But keep that how and what. See, everybody's fascinated with their own business. We are. But the wide world out there doesn't need to know that much about it. Okay? And so then your connect to purpose story is, when you do this correctly, what is the impact that it has on real people? And you try to find those stories. Matter of fact, we talk about collecting those connect to purpose stories. So you listen. If you're good at this, you listen. And you listen to your people, and you listen to people who are out in the field, and you say, this person who really could have gone blind ended up not. And they're an artist. And if they'd gone blind, they would have lost their livelihood. Or this child who had such trauma now is happy. She's enrolled in college. Everything's going well. Talk about your why, the impact of your why on a real person. It's a powerful formula, folks, and the more we dig into it, the better and better it gets. And once you get good at this, whether you're doing a 5-minute elevator speech or a 30-minute keynote, once you get good at doing this why formula, it always works, and it takes your ordinary speech and make it into something extraordinary.